And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and this is the video for Lab 4B, Volumetric Cloud and I guess what's called exponential fog versus a sky sphere in clouds. Now, the reason why I bring up both systems is because both systems are available. You can still bring in sky spheres into 5, although the sky sphere would be the older way of doing things. In fact, if you are in 4.27, one of the first things that you're going to have to do is turn your blueprint sky dome or sky sphere off. So then that way you'll be able to follow along with the assignment or with us when we're doing stuff in 5. Other than that, everything else more or less works the same way. So basically what we'll be doing here is we'll be adding to that base level that we started off the other day, or in the last project, right? We'll be adding to that the fog, we'll be adding to that clouds, we'll be looking at some of the basic parameters, and then we're going to go back into also we'll add what are called the light stocks, and then once we figure out how to do that, we'll go back into our own project and reset up the lights for scratch. And when I mean our own project, the one where we were already working in the map that has the landscape and all the foliage and whatnot, right? So first things and also we need to talk about a few things that you need to do to set up before any of this even works. Okay. All right, so with that said, the only other thing that I'll make mention to here is that I've left another video from another content creator that talks about different tricks that you can do with atmosphere and fog. So if you, I'm just going to show you what I want to do as far as like creating the rays and seeing all the different things that we can do with it. This person will take it, I think, a step deeper and give you, like in this scenario, you get this, in that scenario, you get that. You should watch out for this, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and start. So this is what the Volumetric fogs will eventually end up looking like. You can see that we get the rays and the occlusion of the rays as they go through objects. We'll also get this effect when we're on the ground and it's going through a mesh. So if I push play here, we'll see that we get a really cool effect through our forest if we're running through it, that it feels, let me see if I can get to a part where it's a little bit more open. There we go. Because if I go up like this, we lose the effect, obviously, because we're not looking directly at the sun. So even through the little stuff, look at that. Even through the bushes, we get sun rays that cut through. All right. The other thing I also want you to notice before we start is that this will also leave effects on the walls as well. So the lighting will come in and leave the imprint of the window. So we can see there that I'm pretty sure it's actually this edge right here that's cutting through. So the glass material actually allows for the Volumetric stuff to go through. So if we were to come back here, we'd still be able to see that through the window. And let me see if I can push play here. And let's walk over to the light and let's stand in front of it. And you can see again that we get even through our character. Now the only thing I don't like is the blue shining off the character. This will have to be with proximity settings. And at the moment, we're not going to deal with that. So, all right. Okay, so let's take a look at how to do this. First things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a 4.27 document. And what I want to do here is I want to show you that right now you do have clouds that are working, but those clouds are part of a blueprint that is called a blueprint sky sphere, if I'm not mistaken. So let's go and find that real quick. And there it is. So you'll see right here that we have something that's called Sky Sphere Blueprint. I'm going to turn this off, and the second that we do, we get to see the sky sphere. God, these things have so many things that are so close. There's atmospheric fog, which you guys already have placed. The skylight is already there. And I guess it's the sky atmospheric. So maybe it's just because atmospheric fog is up. Yep. That's what's actually causing what you guys are seeing. Okay. Anyways, I just wanted to make note of that because as soon as we start putting in the other stuff, if that's up, you're not going to be able to follow along with us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this, and let's go back to here. All right, so this is obviously the level that we've been working on. This particular level, as we said earlier, is found in the third person underneath maps. In the last tutorial, what we did was we created a folder underneath my_stuff, and in there we had a map that we had called practice lighting map. Let's go ahead and go back there. So in this one, what we have is what we learned in the last tutorial, right? So we have both the directional light, the sky atmosphere, and the skylight. So with those lights there, we're going to start adding first we're going to add the fog, and then from there we'll add the volumetric clouds. Now, before we start, there's two things that you're going to need to do. First thing is go into settings and go underneath project settings. Up at the very top, type in the word fog. And what you're looking for here is that support sky atmospheric affecting height fog. So we want to make sure that this is checked on. And if it is, great. And it will probably ask you to restart the computer. Don't do it yet. Obviously, in my case, it didn't because I've already got mine turned on because I've already done the project. But we're going to do one more thing. So before you tell it wait on the restart, and then we're going to go and do the other thing. Now, the other thing is going to be adding a plugin. So this will be the first time that we're adding a plugin to our system, and it won't be the last. There's lots of plugins that basically, to describe a plugin is a small piece of software that's added to something larger to give it a capability that it didn't have before. Now, there are tons of plugins, and if you work in Blender and some of the other programs, you're constantly finding plugins and uploading them to give you the ability. It's basically like little small programs that help you. In our case, we want the volumetric fog to be turned on. So we want that effect, that set of plugins to start making effect to everything. So what we want to do is find, so I went to plugins, I started typing in volume or volumetric. I made sure that this is checked. Once it's checked, you're going to get down here in the bottom right hand corner. I go ahead and restart, and at this point, yes, let's go ahead and restart the game or the level or your project, so then that way these effects will take place, right? In my case, I'm just going to close it, and I'm going to continue on. So if you need to, pause the video at this time, restart your project, and then come back. All right, so we're back. The next thing that we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to add the fog. So if we go to all, there's two places we can find it. We can go to all and we can type in fog, or we can go to here, which is going to be the quick reference, and we can go to visual effects and we can add the fog. Now, the reason why I'm going to add the fog first, and what I did was I just clicked and dragged it in, is because it's going to complete the bottom of the atmosphere, right? So everything that is from the horizon line down is taken care of by the exponential fog, and anything that is horizon line above is taken care of by the sky atmosphere, and then eventually we'll be adding the volumetric clouds to that once we look over what we can do with the fog. Now, with the fog selected, I'm going to go to the details panel. Just like everything else, we're going to put this 0, 0, and I think we are maybe at 700 with this. Okay, now from here, I want to look at some of the settings that I have for the fog. So if we take the fog density down to 0, you'll see that we basically don't have any fog anymore. So let's bring this up just a little bit. Let's bring it to 1. And that makes it completely foggy to where we can't even see the sun anymore. So this is a 0 to 1 range for the fog density. Let's go to 0.5, let's go to 0.2, let's go to 1, let's go to 0. And let's slowly start to just drag that in. And you see that, I mean, look at that, that's like 0.000 something to get it to where we can still see the horizon. So there, we can still see the horizon line, but it doesn't look like there's any fog on it. Anyways, I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. Let's bring it up to, let's say, I don't know, maybe a 0.01. Or let's actually put this back to what its default would be. All right, so with it on its default, let's look at the next thing that we can do. We can actually increase the distance, right? So beyond the density, we can actually say the fog goes from the ground all the way up, right? So from the ground all the way up. And we actually end up losing the sun because of it. So at some point, so much fog is there. Just like on a very, very foggy day, I'm sure that you guys have been outside on a very foggy day and you look up and you might be able to see where the sun is supposed to be, but you don't actually see the disk that would be the sun, right? From there, we also have the, let's go ahead and put that back on default. Then we have the ability to be able to increase the density of it. So now the thickness of the fog is, or the fog itself is thicker. So one was how high up the fog went. The other one is the density of the fog itself, whether the fog is very, very dense or not dense at all. So let's actually put those back to their default settings. There we go. All right, the other thing we'll look at here very quickly. Okay, so for right now, that's all I want to look at with the fog. We'll come back and do some other stuff with it here in a moment. Now that we have the atmosphere from the horizon line down, let's go ahead and add the Volumetric Clouds. So we're going to go in and type in volumetric. If you go a little bit further, you'll find it. So there it is in all. Again, you could go here to the quick reference and go down to visual effects, and you could drag it directly from here. So Volumetric Clouds. And the second we do, we get some nice puffy clouds that show up. Let's go ahead and do 0 tab, and let's make this 600. I think that'll put it right underneath. Now, from here, what I'd like you guys to notice is that first, let me tell you that this is not the only type of clouds you can have out there. You can actually go into cloud materials, and there are actually some different types of clouds that you might be able to bring in. Different ways that the clouds can be created. So if we were to come here and maybe type in the word cloud, that might help find this a little bit easier. So we only find. Now, I'm going to go ahead and default this back to the original one. There are packs that you can download that will have other types of clouds, so you don't just have these puffy clouds. There are rain clouds, there are, angry storm clouds. So there's all sorts of packs that will deal with clouds. I don't want you guys spending any money in this class, or at least as money as possible. If you want to go and buy some, weather packs, that's fine. But right now, I just want to show you what's available with what's already here, right? So with the clouds selected, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to speed my camera up, and I'm going to take this up to a 32. I'm going to go back to the clouds, and I'm actually going to bottom the clouds out. So I'm going to take them and make them as close to the ground as possible. So you'll see that we have layer amplitude. So we can push the clouds way up into the sky, or we can push them way down. Now, once I've done that, I'm actually going to scroll up in very, very fast speed. We'll get to a moment where we cross over the cloud layer. There you can see some of the clouds underneath me. And let me get up high enough to where we can sort of see what we're doing here. All right, so at this level, we are actually at the cloud level. We might be able to see our thing down there, but it would be very, very, very tiny. From here, what I want to show you is that we are indeed raising the cloud level up and the bottom of the cloud level down. The other thing we can also do is flatten the clouds so that the clouds are skinny, and then we could move the clouds up even though they're skinny. So there is height of the clouds, which is independent from the bottom amplitude of the clouds. So that's what I wanted you to see. The other thing also that we can see very clearly from here is that this only goes for a certain distance. It doesn't go all the way to the end of the horizon. And a lot of that is distance, max tracing distance. Let's see. There is an option that actually takes the clouds and makes them go further and further out. I think that's actually it right there. The tracing max distance, how far off into the distance these things will go. Or how, yeah, there. We can very clearly see now that we are in this very little patch of sky. And then that patch of sky gets bigger as you make this go out. Okay, let's make the clouds a little bit taller. And maybe that's what I was thinking was, if you're up a bit higher, you might be able to see the height of the ones down at the bottom, or the ones at the end get a little bit taller. And so thus makes it look like it's going further and further and further out. Now to get back to the floor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on box brush. Really, you could double click on any of these, and what it'll do is it should zoom you closer to where that object is. Now, once we've seen what's happening with the clouds up there, let's go ahead and make some changes down here at the bottom. So we're going to go to Volumetric Cloud, and let's go back to the details panel, and maybe bring the bottoms up a little bit, and make the clouds not as tall, and see if we can see them go off into the distance. Now, some of this may be overlap between the exponential fog and the sky itself, which is okay. I mean, I have no problem with that if there's a little bit of overlap. Just sometimes you may not see the thing fading off into the end the way with the parameter going all the way down to the bottom of wherever it's going to be. All right, so now that we have those two things there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the directional light, and there are a few things that we are going to change with it, because now that we have clouds, we have the ability to be able to get the sun to interact with those clouds and with the fog itself, right? So you can see that it's illuminating and manipulating the fog. So I'm going to get this the sun to a point where it might be behind a cloud like this. So you can see that I've placed it behind a cloud. And what we're going to be working on now is the rays of light coming off that cloud. Now, before we move on, I want you to know that there is a keyboard shortcut that's called, you can do Control L. And what Control L does is you can see this sort of like, and you know what, let me move this in a way where it's here. So Control L will drop this this gizmo or this gadget widget, and what that widget will do is it will show you the atmosphere, or the sky dome, the sphere, and which direction the sun is, and allow you to be able to, from here, sort of set up the position for it. So this is kind of nice because it gives you an idea where the light's coming from, what the effect of it's going to be, whether it's below the horizon or above the horizon, without actually needing to look at it. The arrow represents, and all I'm doing now is holding Control L and moving my mouse without, I'm not clicking on anything, I'm just moving my mouse. So Control L is being held down by my left hand, and my right hand is moving the mouse. When I let go, it'll stay there for a second, then eventually pop out, and wherever I left it, that's where the sun is going to be. Now, for me, I already know that I'm going to go 0, 0, 0. That's going to put it on my horizon. I can see here which direction the light's coming from because of where the arrow is, and as long as I have the arrow pointing down, then it's actually up above the horizon line, and I can still use this to change it. Okay, so we can see a little bit of an effect on the clouds already, right? Can you see how the shadows are moving on the clouds based on where the light is? Over here, the shadows move contra the light. All right, so with the sun being behind the clouds, with the Volumetric plugin turned on, with exponential fog turned on in world settings, we are now ready to go ahead and create some light rays. So I'm going to go ahead and do a save all, just because sometimes it's a good idea to save every once in a while. And with the direct light selected, I'm going to scroll down until I find, and really what you could do is you could do a collapse all, and what we're looking for here is, first it's going to be atmosphere and clouds, and then we're also going to need light shafts. So the atmosphere and clouds, the reason why I go to this one is because we want the sun to cast shadows in the clouds. So by clicking this on, see how we get a little bit like the sun sort of disappears a little bit more behind the clouds versus earlier where it was still kind of pushing through pretty harsh. It's still very bright there and the scattering is very strong, where here it's like more controlled and we get the clouds look like they're thicker. The other thing I'm also going to do is go ahead and turn on cast shadows for clouds, cast shadows for atmosphere, and cast cloud shadows. So now the clouds themselves are casting shadows. All right, once that's there, I'm going to scroll back up to where we had light shafts, and the first thing I'm going to do is light shaft bloom. And in doing so, we'll see that we should be getting a little bit more of some rays, and then we also get this weird bubble thing. So there are some settings that I sort of go through, and this is what I like to do to create the effect that I'm looking for. So I do a 10 there, which on the bloom brightness drops down the sort of that glistening feel that was happening, sort of like the sun is moving. From there, what that does is it takes down a lot of the bloom itself. So I'm going to go to bloom scale, turn that into a 2 to bring some of that up. And then we're going to go to bloom threshold, and we're going to make this a 0.1. And by doing so, what's happened is we still get a lot of this sort of an effect on the sun, but it has now created the rays. And if I put this behind a cloud, we now see that unlike earlier, we are actually getting this really cool rays through the sun sort of an effect, and or rays through the clouds effect. And depending on where we are, we'll get this. Now, the only thing that I'm also still not liking about this is the fact that the sun is still doing a lot of that glistening thing, where it's sort of got this sort of like deal. If I bring this down to a 1, that should get rid of a lot of that. So now we have even less of that. It's still there, but it's smaller. So it's still glistening, still meant to be doing that, but we're not getting it so much, especially when this thing goes above. Like, it doesn't matter so much. You don't see it when it's behind a cloud, but as soon as it pops up over a cloud, see the difference? It's like almost like the corona, right? Like and I guess that's true, you know, as you as you look at the sun through a cloud, maybe you can see more of the shape of the disk itself. And then as it comes over the edge, or it comes through the lighter part of the edge of the cloud, where the cloud's not as thick, you see the edge of the disk form, and then the corona. All right, so settings wise, what I've done is I've left light shaft. I've turned that on. I've gone to bloom scale, made that a 2. Gone to bloom threshold, made that a 0.1, and then gone to bloom max brightness and turned that to a 1. And at this point we have pretty good. The only other thing you might want to do here is maybe go to Volumetric Cloud and make some changes there to the height of the cloud, where the clouds are, as far as like, you know, how you want this coming through, whether the clouds are taller or shorter will have some effect, obviously, in how the sun is, how the rays are coming through. Now, the last thing that we're going to do to this is we're going to add the post-processing volume. So remember that in, I think actually in both, in the 4.27 and in the 5 tutorial, or in the base, in the third person map that is generated when we first start a template, we do have a post-processing volume in both. Let's actually, did I leave the other one open? Do we have a, yep, we have a post-processing volume here as well. So let's see if I turn that off. Yep, it is having an effect on the world. So let's go ahead and add one of our own. So I'm going to go again to volumes. It's going to be in the same place when we did the stuff for the river and for the pool. So we're going to go into volumes, go into post-processing volume, and add one. Now, as we add one, in the previous videos, what we did was we wanted the effect to only be inside, or only be included inside the square or the volume itself. In this case, we actually want this to go all the way across the level. So we don't want to make a giant box. We just want the effect to literally go across the entire level. So the box is just literally just there as a, hey, here's where it is, but instead of having to drag it all the way out, you can just let it sit there. Now, to do this, we're going to have to, and let me go ahead and do a collapse all. So this, I believe, is going to be under... Oh, there it is. Post-processing volume settings. So if you go there, you'll see that right now it is enabled, which means that the whatever's in the post-processing volume is taking effect. Right now, nothing, so we haven't made any changes. And then underneath it, we have infinity extended. You can see unbound. And when we do that, it basically the whole, whatever's happening in the post-processing volume happens across the entire level, right? So you don't have to drag everything out. All right, once we have that selected, we don't actually need to be in the box anymore to see the effects of what we're going to do. So at this moment, what I want to do is I want to take some of this brightness out, right? You see how very, very bright it is? Let's go to exposure. And in the other one, or in our level, what they have is min EV 100 set to 0, and they also have max set to 0. And then from here, what we want to do is go to, well, this is default from the other level. And then what we want to do is go to metering mode, go to manual. And once we do that, obviously this thing is all the way down. So let's bring some of the brightness back in. And now we can actually control that brightness. So if I go to this, we can see now that I get a nice effect on the rays without the light of the thing or the light of the hole in the sky sphere blowing everything out, right? Because right now we're sort of controlling that by controlling the amount of light that's being exposed through the post-processing volume. So let's see what happens if we bring it down to an 8, a 9, 10. Let's bring it down to a 5. That may be too dark. Let's go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seems to, so it seems like 8 seems to be the reasonable place there for that. Now, if we were to, let's say, put these back. I know, I guess if we're doing this manually, then yeah, this would be something that we are applying. There's other effects, obviously, that you can keep adding or subtracting from this, and you can really make it whatever you want. Let's make this a 9 so I get a little bit more light in there. Okay, and then we'll scooch this over maybe to another part, and then maybe go down here. So, very cool. And you can, I mean, you guys can tweak this until your heart's content as far as like how you want to make this look. Like, for example, right now I feel like the fog is maybe a little bit too thick. So I might come here and maybe go to fog density, drop it down, maybe go here to this fog density and drop that down without, maybe I'll go to the fall, so that it's just right on the horizon. Add a little bit of density there. Okay, very cool. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and save. So we're going to save our work here before we move on. And we have created from scratch a pretty believable sky cloud system. All right, so let's go back to our content folder. Let's go back to third person. Let's go back to maps, and let's go back to the third person map. Now, from here, there's already quite a few of these things there. What I'd like you to do is actually select all of them and delete them so that we are actually, the only thing I'm going to leave is the post-processing volume for now. But everything else I'm going to remove. And the reason why, well, you know what, let's get rid of the post-processing volume too. Now, I already have a folder that's created that's called lighting. If you don't have a folder that's called lighting, you can come up here, create a new folder, call it lighting, and then this is where we're going to drop everything in. Now, also by removing that post-processing volume, it was actually suppressing some of the some of these materials are emissive, meaning that like this thing is actually producing a little bit of its own light. The waterfall is also producing a little bit of its own light, actually a lot of its own light. We can see quite, oh, that's kind of creepy how you can see the reflection in the surface of that, which is still set up to the clouds. And it looks like the water surface is also glowing a bit too, like it has a bit of an emissive in it. Now, emissive just means that it's something that emits its own light. So it's emissive of light. All right, so let's go ahead and start adding our own lighting to our scene, our own lighting from scratch. And this is why I'm doing it this way. So then that way we are actually inputting everything and we are in full control of. There are no default or some preset that somebody changed when they put it in there originally, or that the level is doing for us, right? So we're going to build our lighting from scratch. So direct light. Now notice that the direct light gets dropped down here at the bottom, so I'm going to grab that and drag it into lighting, and now it's in that folder. The only thing I'm going to do to it right now is just make sure that it is in the direction that I want it to be. So I want it coming over the hills over there, so I'm going to use my space bar to bring it back up the other way. And I can tell, even though my sky dome isn't there, because of the direction that the shadows are going in, right? So I can see that the shadows are there, which means the light needs to be over here, and then also obviously, that my icon has got the arrow pointing down in this direction. Now, the only other thing that I'm going to do with that is, let's go ahead and select it real quick. And I'm going to place it with the details panel. Let's put it in with the transform. Let's make this 0, 0, 1000. So it's now back in its original position. From there, let's add a sky light. So once that's in there, we will make this 0, 0, 900. Remember that you need to put real-time capture, turn that on. For right now, that's the only thing that I want to remind you of. It's not going to do anything, and it's even going to give you an error message saying, hey, you still need to add a sky atmosphere for this thing to work. No problem. We're going to go in here and type in the word sky. There's the sky atmosphere. We're going to go ahead and place that. Again, I'm going to go to my location tool. I'm going to go 0, 0, and we'll make this 800, so it's just underneath the other. From here, we're going to go in and add all the fog and the clouds. So let's type in fog. That would be the easy way to find the exponential fog. I'll place that in. You can already see how it's affecting the environment. Right now, the only concern is dropping it into the right place. So what is that, 700? And then finally, we are going to, well, not finally, we are going to add volumetric. So remember, you can find it here underneath all, or you can always find it from here underneath visual effects. So there's volumetric. And this is actually a nice place to grab everything because everything is right there. You don't have to remember, well, what do I have to get next? Because it's quite a few things. I mean, you can see that just setting up lighting is like this kind of lighting, that kind of lighting. Then you need the atmosphere and the dome, and so there's a lot of stuff going on here. So let's go. I think let's make this 600. That'll put it underneath there. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add that post-processing volume, right? So again, place actors, remove this. Let's go to volumes, and we just finished doing this. So post-processing volume. Place it inside the floor or inside the viewport. Let's go to transform. 0, 0, 500 is probably fine. And again, the only thing that we want to do to this at the moment is make sure that it extends all the way out. And now we're ready to go ahead and start making our changes to this. So starting, since we have the post-processing volume selected, let's go ahead and start with that. So we want to make this metered. we want to make this manual. And then I think we figured out that 9 was a good number for that. So we have sort of like this nice sort of like resistance of the atmosphere to the light, and the atmosphere itself sort of absorbing some of that light, so it doesn't hit us like it was before, right? Like this is what it looked like before, where it's just like full on light and there was like nothing happening. Well, that's probably also because our exposure is at 9. But you know, very washed out. It's like you're in a desert with, you know, like the earth is bouncing a lot of light back at you. So here, and then exposure at 9, and then that'll give us this sort of nice look there. All right, the next thing is going to be going into the skylight, making sure that the light itself is on real-time capture. From there, again, you could make some changes to the color. Everything else more or less wants to be left on. The only thing you might do is maybe change the intensity of how bright the bounce is. So we could maybe mess with those settings a little bit. I'm going to leave them. Oh, that's actually here. Sorry. Lots of things that look the same. That's just said intensity scale. The other one that I was messing with just a second ago said intensity something, intensity light, indirect light intensity. So let's make this a 2. Let's make it a 3. Let's make it a 5. Let's make it a 10. And you can slowly start to see how at 100 it's really, maybe if you were on a moon surface, right? This would be great for a moon surface. Why? Because there would be no atmosphere to block the light from getting in. So that would make perfect sense for this. Let's drop this back down to a 1. All right, so now that we've set that level, let's go into our clouds. And, or no, this is the sky atmosphere. So here, I don't really want to make too many changes. This is actually pretty good. Let's go to the next one. Oh, also, see how none of this stuff went into my lighting folder as I dragged it in? So let's go ahead and actually put this all into that lighting folder before we move on. Lighting. And I guess you could, you know, hold Control and select multiple things, and then right-click, move to, and then lighting. Okay, this way I don't have to be searching. Oh, see, fog is down there. And this one I can just drag in there because it was close enough. Once I've done this change, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Remember, anytime you see an asterisk, it means that it's visually there, but it's not there yet. Okay, so now let's affect our fog. So it looks like I may have multiples of things, and this is actually a good thing that's happened, because what it lets me do is point something out, is that if I have a second one and I start making changes to that one, you're not going to be able to see any of the effects of that, because the first one is still actually the one that's legitimately doing the stuff. So if you do end up with, let's say, 2 atmospheres, you make a whole bunch of changes to one and nothing's happening, look to see if you don't have another one that's there. So with this second one, let's select that. I'm going to right click on it, and let's go to Edit, Delete. So it's no longer there, and it's no longer affecting us. I think what I missed is my I don't have my volumetric clouds here. So let's go ahead and add that. Maybe what I did was I grabbed 2 of these instead of one of the other. There we go. So now we have this one. Again, I'm going to grab that because it's close enough and I can see it. I'm going to drag it. If not, right click, move to, and then put it in your lighting folder. All right. Well, since I just added that, let me make sure that it's in the 0, 0, 0, and I don't know, let's make this 1100 just so it's above where the other one is. All right, so now that I have that, let's go ahead and start designing this the way that I want it to look. Let's go to the directional light. So see how it's nice when they're all right here in the same one? You don't have to go too far. Let's go here. And let me drop this closer to the edge. Let me scooch this over. Let's go over this way. I just sort of liked this area over here. I like the way this sort of dips down and it creates this neat little like light shadow right here, and then eventually it like sort of like reflects off of the water surface, and I sort of like that too. All right, so I'm just going to leave that here. I'm going to allow a little bit of it to poke through, so then that way I can see the sky disk as I'm manipulating the other settings. So from here, we could make some changes to the Volumetric Clouds. So I'm going to select that. Maybe we want to bottom them a little bit closer. Maybe we want the height on the clouds larger. We want them to go further off into the distance. Here, say like that. And this is also part of the height thing too. You can see that the bubble actually comes in all directions. So now we see the top, the very, very tops of stuff. Okay, let's say we leave this at a 2. That's good enough. Leave the sun in a good place. From here, now that we have the sun, let's see, what do we want to do? I think with the clouds, that's it. You may go in here and make some changes now that we have everything connected. What this will do is it's going to change the amount of light that actually gets through the clouds. So you'll actually see how it starts to brighten up. It also starts to pixelate. Let's see what other effects we can do with it. There we go. So, I encourage you to play around with this. That's kind of cool. Look, in this one, depending on how much of it I use, the disk disappears inside the clouds. All right, so now let's create the rays. So that's going to be going back into our direct light. Once the direct light is chosen, we're going to scroll down far enough until, or remember, you can collapse all categories. And the one that we're looking for is light shaft. So we're going to open that up. I personally don't like that really big bubbly thing, so I'm going to make that a 1. I'm going to make the blooms a 2, so we get large blooms. Then I'm going to go to the bloom threshold, drop that down to, let's say, 0.2, maybe a 0.3. Just depends on how strong I want those. Since I'm still in the direct light, I should be able to grab it and place it through, or keep messing with its position to see if I like it in other places better. Like maybe it looks a little better somewhere. Last thing with this guy is we'll close. Now, the other thing is this. See how I get sort of like a reflection around the mountain of this? Let's see if I can do that. So if I turn on shaft occlusion, look at how much darker it is where the light isn't beaming in. Now this we couldn't do earlier because we didn't have landscape or objects in front of us when we were when we had the direct light and we were pushing it through the clouds earlier. But this is a really cool way of creating like a really dark effect in the areas that the light shaft is not. And then you can sort of see how this is now wrapping around the outer edge as far as like how much of the thing is masked, right? So very, very dark versus much, much lighter. All right, we've got that guy. Let's say we'll leave it at about right there. Now let's go to the fog. So we'll drop down into the fog. Let's add a little bit of fog to this. It might knock out some of the shaft a little bit. Now, because the fog is as bright as it is, we might go back to the direct light. And you see how we're doing a lot of back and forth, right? So I'm going to go back to the direct light. Let's see, go to light. Let's make the lux 20. So it's much, much brighter. And then I'm going to go into the post-processing volume. And maybe I'll drop it down again. Maybe I'll make this 8. So you can see how by, and it's like a seesaw. You change something over there, and then you can affect something over here, and you get a slightly more exaggerated effect. Okay. Maybe I want the fog to look a little bit darker. So let's go, or maybe slightly change it from like this off-white. So let's go here and let's go into the color, and maybe we'll add a little bit of a like an orangey red tint to it. Morning sunrise usually has a little bit more red to it, and this would be lower atmosphere, so maybe it's not being affected as much. See, we can go in and give it like a bluish tint. Just depends. I mean, maybe this is a very tropical area and that a lot of the light is bouncing off of the trees, and so you get maybe a green effect, or maybe maybe your area is polluted, so you would get a green effect. We can also sort of dampen that down a little bit. So if the density was kind of thick or very, very bright, you can sort of do that, and it sort of deadens it out in the background. So that's kind of cool too. And all right, so now we have an effect that's sellable. It looks like, let me see if I can move this a little bit more. Oh, I like that. Let's see. Right there on the mountain. Let's drop that down a little bit. Very cool. All right, so that is the placement of the Volumetric fog. It is also the usage of the exponential, exponential fog and the Volumetric clouds. Now, for those that were following along here, those are still there. All the stuff that we just talked about is here. So you can see the post-processing volume has what it's going to have. The atmospheric fog is there. You can also go over here, type in Volumetric, and look for the Volumetric cloud. You can add those to and it's in the latest version. So you have to do 4.27 because they did updates to this as well. And then from here you can be doing everything that we're doing. The only thing you'll have to do is make sure that you turn that off, because see how if I bring in the Volumetric clouds and the sky blueprint is turned on, we don't really, I mean, you kind of see the ones that are close, but the ones that are outside you don't really see. So and then there's also a problem with the sphere, the light shining through. It doesn't follow as you move the light here, but if you do not have the sky blueprint turned on, then it does. Okay, so if you guys have any questions about this, let me know. If we've run across any problems in setting up this project, let me know. But you should be able to get to all of the different things that I said. The only thing in 4.27 is you have to turn off the sky sphere blueprint. Okay, all right, so that is a lot of environmental lighting. In the next video, I think we deal with day-night cycles. So we'll be taking this a step further as far as making it look like the sun is actually moving. Okay, very cool. So sky sphere versus Volumetric cloud and fog. Let me know if you guys have any questions, inbox, or questions directly to the question area for Lab 4. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye. We'll see you in the next video.